It's the second day of the World Economic Forum that's currently being held in Cape Town. SABC journalist Francis Hurd is standing by to give us an update. Francis, a very, very good morning to you. I suppose the best starting point is to take a look at what happened yesterday. What were some of the highlights that came out of the World Economic Forum?
Well, Leanne, not too much happening in terms of public events. That really kicks off in earnest today. We'll have the opening welcome by the President, and then we kind of have these back-to-back sessions looking at the challenges of Africa, often three running simultaneously at one time. So yesterday, a lot of the action happening behind closed doors. You could see that a lot of the players were here, and one delegate telling me, you don't get this access to African ministers, business people, mining leaders, everybody milling around, and a lot of people set up those meetings beforehand. So that's all happening behind doors. It's about relationships. We did get an opportunity to speak to a lot of the delegates about the state of Africa, because these meetings are somewhat introspective. Africa has been rising for the last decade and a half. We've seen these incredible growth rates. But then you have to look at the other side, that these are small economies coming off a low base, so they could grow. Africa is still the poorest continent, and we're still only contributing, if you can believe, Leanne, less than 3% to global growth or global GDP. So a lot of introspection. And depending who you talk to, I spoke to a businessman from Kenya, and he said we have to change things. The status quo cannot remain. We have to look at how we remain competitive. Otherwise, we will lose out. And there's this huge, vast population of young people growing up in the next 15 years. That working age population in Africa is going to swell to 1 billion. So a lot of talk about how you ensure that those young people get jobs. How do you ensure that this youth bulge is an opportunity, not a threat? If you speak to other businessmen, I spoke to Thabo Dloti from Liberty, and he said actually all the fundamentals are there. Africa will continue to grow, and South African businesses just have to take the opportunities, more opportunities that this continent affords us.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I imagine. And I got a sense of that yesterday while we were doing a broadcast there. There was just talk about the youth and the focus on the youth, reimagining Africa, taking Africa to a different level. However, when we look at the practicalities of all of this, it seems very difficult. I mean, in and amidst all of this talk that's happening, we look at some numbers that are coming out here when we look at our economy and focusing in on South Africa. And we got quite a whammy yesterday, a double whammy. I mean, we saw that business confidence has hit a 16-year low in South Africa, and companies are reporting a decline in output for the first time this year, and all of this on the back of a lack of energy, and because of load shedding and because of what's happening with Eskom. I imagine the talk of energy at this World Economic Forum on Africa is something that's a huge and massive problem.
Energy is huge, and also interestingly, Leanne, just the day before I left to come down, we also reported that South Africa was actually cutting back on its own infrastructure spend due to fiscal constraints. So we know that this is so important. Eskom will still keep spending, but of course there's a huge dearth of other things, just the bridges, the roads that help us trade with our African counterparts. So that was sad news that we're cutting back a little, and there is a deficit across the continent. I've heard figures of $20 billion a year needed to fund that gap for the basic infrastructure that Africa needs. So that is one of the discussion points. Gordon Brown, the former UK Prime Minister, is here, and he will be focusing on infrastructure, and a lot of the delegates focusing on that as well, and also looking at how we deepen capital markets, because of course if you attract capital inflows to Africa, that capital can then be directed directed towards building this infrastructure. And infrastructure, it's been said, crowds in investment. If we have good energy, if we have those roads, that access, it crowds in investment from all over the world, Leanne.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so let's quickly look at today. We don't want to let you go without telling us what's happening. I know that President Jacob Zuma is expected to address the forum. Just let us know, what can we expect on the agenda today?
Well, he will do that opening welcome. He's expected to reiterate what all the ministers are saying, that South Africa is open for business. And of course, that message is important because this is an African forum, and it comes after those attacks in South Africa on foreign nationals. So this emphasis always on those attacks being foreign. We as South Africa are open. We believe in Ubuntu still, and we want to do business with the rest of the continent. He's also expected to talk about the ocean economy. Then we'll hear from the co-chairs, Patrice Motsepe, one of those. We have Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka, our former deputy president. She's now at the UN, focusing on gender equality, which is, of course, crucial for sustainable growth. She will be laying out her expectations of what's to come today. And then, like you say, those challenges, a lot of the sessions you can see focusing, for instance, meeting development challenges, closing the economic gap, that's looking at inequality. A competitiveness report will be launched. And then Ebola, a big session on Ebola and what we can learn from that crisis management and how we handle those things better in future. So really a packed agenda today.
All right. Francis Hurd, thank you very much for talking to us. Francis, from our business desk here at the SABC, covering the World Economic for us here throughout the day. All right, let's take a break.